beginning, there was darkness. And God said, let there be light. And there was light. And he looked at the light. And he said that it was good. And God separated the light from the darkness and called it day and night. He separated the earth from the heavens and called it land and sky. He separated the earth from the sea. And then he filled this creation with all of these amazing animals, fish and birds and mammals and plants and wildlife. And he looked and he said, this is good. And finally, he placed into his good creation, his finest creation, Adam, made from the dust of the earth. Man and woman, he created them. And he said, this is your place to be fruitful. This is your place to be able to multiply. He made them as representations of him on earth. And their job was to look after creation, to be responsible, to see it flourish, and to see everything flourish around them. This is the picture that we find in Genesis chapter 2 of the Bible. But then when you turn the page, you get to Genesis chapter 4, and this world is broken, and it's full of jealousy and murder and violence, and you can't help but ask, how did we get here? How did we go from chapter 2 to chapter 4? And I think that there's moments in our lives when we look at where we are and we ask the same question, how did this get to this point? How did my marriage become so warped and twisted? How did my job become so all-consuming? How did my money get to this point that it's controlling me? How did I get from there to here? And for this first man and woman, it all went wrong when they had this strange, mysterious encounter with a serpent.
Has God indeed said, you shall not eat of every tree of the garden?
We may eat the fruit of the trees of the garden, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, God has said, you shall not eat it, nor shall you touch it, lest you die.
You will not surely die, for God knows that in the day you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil.
When I read this story, I have so many questions. I mean, who is this serpent, and how can he speak? And why is he against God? I mean, he literally says that God is lying to them. And man and woman, they believe him. And they eat this fruit. And they expect it to fulfill them in this miraculous way. And then we have one of the greatest anticlimaxes in history. As they bite. And all that comes is a slow growing sense of shame. And this isn't just their story, this is our story as well. You know, I was at the shops the other day with my son Cole, and there's a lot of things that I love about being a dad, but there's some things that I hate, and one of them is shopping. And the reason I hate it is because you go from aisle to aisle to aisle, and every single aisle we go down, your kids just turn around and they're like, I want that, I want that, I want that, can I get this, can I get this, can I get this? And you look, and it is just junk, it is plastic rubbish, it is bits of poo pretending to be a toy. It is craziness. And we've got a house full of it. And yet they just want something more. One more thing. One more thing. And the cycle of wanting is relentless. And it doesn't end. And we are exactly the same. I get the new iPhone, and within 6 months they release another one, and I have to have that. Suddenly what I had is no longer good enough. And I'm constantly looking for the next thing, and it's like a conveyor belt. It comes towards me, and the moment I get it, I'm like, is this really all that it was? But then I look and there's something else. And so I fight, and I work, and I sacrifice, and it comes, and I get it. And this anticlimax occurs again, and again, and again. 1 John 2:15 says, "Do not love the world or the things of the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all that is in the world, the desires of the flesh and the desires of the eyes and the pride of life is not from the Father, but is from the world." In this passage, John, he's not talking about culture. He's not saying that music is bad, that we shouldn't enjoy the arts or creativity. What he's talking about is this thirst, this hunger, this desire for something more, which is relentless and ongoing. And he describes 3 ways that we do this. He talks about the desires of the flesh. These are the things that we want to have for ourselves. The desires of the eyes. And the pride of life, where we want everyone to look at us in a certain way. These are the hungers that lead to our darkest days. And he says that the reason why we hunger like this is because we don't know the love of our Father. Could it be that this first man and this first woman, surrounded by paradise, with everything that they could possibly hope or long for, everything that they need, didn't understand even then how much God really loves them? And the craziness of the situation is, the thing that they were longing for, they already had. How often do we fight and do we sacrifice to try and earn for ourselves promises that God is already freely giving to us? And we find ourselves turning from the source of light, turning from the source of life, turning from the source of love. And instead of light, we choose darkness. But God does not stay distant. He comes calling out to them, "Where are you?" Some of us have been hiding our whole lives, and the voice of God is calling to us, "Where are you?" And he explains to them that their actions are going to have consequences, and those consequences are going to affect every aspect of their lives. The way that they work, their relationships, the way that they live. But then in the middle of this passage, we find this tiny ray of light, this tiny little promise.
He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel.
And it's this strange promise. What does this mean? That there will be a descendant of the woman. One who will come, who will attack the serpent, who will put things back into their right place. It's this strange, mysterious little promise that God is not done with them yet. That even on the darkest of days, that there is light, that there is hope, that this will not be the defining moment for their lives. But that the best is still to come. Because God is working, even when they did not deserve it. Even when they could least see it, God is working. And then Adam does this amazing thing. He turns around to his wife and he names her. And the name he gives her is Eve. Eve means mother of all. This is a profound act of faith. He is saying that we are not finished here, that the best is still ahead of us, that Eve, woman, you are going to be the mother of all. You are going to be the one who gives birth to this seed, who's going to make everything right. And from this moment on, everything else in the story is pointing forwards to this time when restoration will coming, for this time when they're finally going to move out of the darkness and they're going to move back into the light. Now, I don't know where you're up to today or what's going on with you, but I want to encourage you to turn the page. I believe that there's greater stuff ahead of you, and that today could be a day when you make a decision to take a step forward. It could look like an act of faith. Maybe changing the way that you speak about something like Adam did with Eve. Maybe it's picking up the phone and making that phone call in the hope that this time it will be different. And there's no reason why you should believe that anything would get better apart from this one thing, that Jesus is working on your behalf, even when you can't see it. So if you're here today and you're feeling like you're far from God, this could be a day when you turn that page. When you say, I don't want to run away anymore. I don't want to be distanced. I'm going to turn back. I'm going to come home. What would it look like for you to turn the page today?